So let's all kind of get on the same page. So we have our early organum, we have our Notre Dame polyphony, we have our motets. And then we get into the 14th century. And where does this take place? In your book, as you were going through in the reading, where approximately are we for the majority of this section? We are in France. And a little bit in Italy towards the end of that, and a little bit up into like Belgium and those areas. But really we're situated in France. Okay? And we have a particular style of composition during this time period, which is called what?
Ars Nova.
The Ars Nova. What language is that in?
Latin.
Latin. Okay? So the Ars Nova, which means what? New art. So not a particularly profound title. So the new art, the new way of writing music. And the Ars Nova has a couple of characteristics that distinguish it from the old art. What is the old art called? Ars Antiqua. Okay, which means the old style or the old art. Which is a term that actually comes around a little bit after the fact, but we're just going to go with it for right now. So we've got the new art during the 14th century, and then the old art, the old style that came before. The old style that came before is what type of composition?
Well, this is in France, are we talking about like the stuff we were just going over?
Yeah,
like,
the stuff that we were just going over. So the Ars Antiqua is basically your Notre Dame polyphony. So Leonin and Periton. Okay. So the new art, the Ars Nova, has a couple of key characteristics. What are they?
They introduced like 6/8.
Good. So they introduced 6/8, and is it 6/8 specifically?
12/8 too.
12/8 too. So they introduced two different things. So one thing that they introduce is mensuration symbols. What does that mean? Time signatures. Basically time signatures. And what else do they introduce?
Separating them into
Yep.
duples instead of just triples, or triples instead of just duples.
Exactly right. So a couple of things. So we have a new notation system that has to do with our note values, that has to do with the fact that previously every note value that we had, and I'm just going to draw it as a quarter note for right now, would have been split into 3/8 notes that you had basically a dotted quarter note. With the Ars Nova style, we have time signatures, we have different designations for notation and note values, and we also then gain the ability to split our notes into two, into a duple meter rather than a triple meter. But this notation piece is what's really important, because previously with the Ars Antiqua, with the Notre Dame polyphony, how do we indicate the type of rhythm that we want?
usually with revs, I think they're called. Just writing out like the letter like LBB or something like that.
Right, so we have that particular pattern of like LBB or LLB or whatever it is. What are those different patterns called?
Ligatures.
So they come through ligatures through our rhythmic modes. Yeah, so in the Ars Antiqua, we have rhythmic modes, which are these specific patterns. And we designate them through these ligatures. But even you guys saw that we're trying to write Iron Man with rhythmic modes, that becomes a little bit obnoxious and not really what we want to be doing. So if we're able to introduce these time signatures and a different form of notation, that opens up this whole other set of possibilities for how I can write all of my different musical lines, how I can line them up, and how all of that fits together. And so the result with the Ars Nova is that we start to get these complexities of rhythm that are really kind of interesting, these complexities of polyphony where you've got these different voices doing all sorts of different things. Okay? In addition to all of this notation stuff with the Ars Nova, we also have some issues with intervals. What intervals become more and more and more allowed as we go through into the Ars Nova? Thirds and sixths. And we see that a little bit. The book talked specifically about England and some of those areas during the Ars Antiqua a little bit earlier, allowing the thirds and sixths. We start to, even in the Notre Dame style, have a few of those. But as we get into the Ars Nova, this becomes a lot more common, these particular types of intervals that before were considered dissonances. Okay? We move a little past that, and we get into what's called the ars subtilior. Which means what, do you think?
Subtle.
The subtle art. And the ars subtilior starts to go a little bit crazy. If you guys saw any of them in your book, and we'll have a chance that we can look some of this up, but you've got all of these different lines, like basically trying to show what they can do in terms of the notation and the polyphony and the different rhythms that we can provide. And so you have all of these different lines, like in different meters and at different times, and just really, really difficult and complicated to sing together. And you also have people writing music in a way that the notation becomes really important, right? So when you're looking at the manuscript of ars subtilior music, it might be written in the shape of a heart, like with the score actually written in the shape of a heart if you're writing a love song, or yeah, like all sorts of crazy things, because it becomes about like, look what I can do, look how complex I can make this, rather than about this is what sounds good. Yeah, they're showing off. What's that?
You heard of Black MIDI?
No, what is that?
It's like, I'll show you later. It's complicated to just tell you about. It's basically ars subtilior.
Is it
Yeah.
like modern ars subtilior?
It's what you're describing, but like with newer stuff.
That's crazy. Well, when you get into the 20th century, you have composers like George Crumb, if you guys know George Crumb, that kind of does that has like crazy scores, also just kind of showing what you can do. And it's important because who is this music intended for?
Rich people.
Rich people, right? So the courts, the educated people, the rich people, yeah, are the ones that are going to be listening to that, and they are appreciating this complexity and this sense of showing off. Okay? Everybody on the same page as far as this goes. All of this stuff at the top are the specific directions for our new composer, who is Peter. But it is important that you all understand Peter's role, because Peter is the one that gets to determine who wins. Your job is to convince him that he should compose in the style of the Ars Nova, or the Ars Subtilior, or the Ars Antiqua,
I don't have the subtle art.
or if you would like to, Spencer, you can convince him to compose in the Italian style. Peter, the faction you choose, so faction meaning the group, whichever group makes the strongest argument and convinces you that their style is the best, that group will win. Here's the twist. I will also be choosing the team that I think makes the strongest argument. Now, you win based on who Peter decides makes the strongest argument. However, at the end of the game, I'm going to write down who I think wins. Peter's going to write down who he thinks wins. If they match, then Peter also wins. All right. The rest of you, this is your job. So your first step, these are all real people, you need to research your character, and you need to research the arguments of your faction. There is no way that you can convince Peter of your side if you don't even know what your side believes. Okay? You are welcome, in the context of convincing Peter, to quote primary sources, to show musical notation, or to play or sing music to help make your case. You may not do anything that is out of the time period. Thus, you may not quote secondary sources. You can use them to help make your argument, but you may not quote from them because they wouldn't have been around at the time. You may also not play musical recordings because we are in the Middle Ages and there is no recording technology. Okay. Many of these characters are not actually contemporary, so we are kind of pairing Leonin and Periton from the 1200s with the Ars Subtilior composers who are from the late 1300s. They're not actually all alive at the same time period, but we're just going to pretend for the purposes
I
of
think
this
you just
game
be
this
really
far.
confused all the time.
Yeah.
What am I
I
doing?
can walk up to someone.
I thought I died.
Yeah, no, you can't use an argument of didn't you die 5 years ago.
That would be a great argument.
That doesn't help. Okay, so on Thursday, your first job will be to introduce yourself and your argument in a 3 to 5 minute speech.
Is this collective, so like Ziggy
Yeah.
and I will present together or separate?
No, this is separately.
Okay.
Oh.
On Tuesday of next week, we will present together. So separately, you need to introduce yourself.
I
And
need to
then
learn
you
French.
need to introduce your argument. I would say, while you are introducing your argument, it might be good to have coordinated with the rest of your factions so that each of you can give a little bit of the argument and you're not all reiterating the same points.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. Following each one of your introductions, Peter can ask questions, and the other people in this room can ask questions to try to start pushing you on your beliefs. All right, so this is the other way in which I will grade you. So I will sit and I will look for all of these things during the course of the game. Notice across the top, I have each person listed, and each one of these is worth 5 points.
So regardless of whether we win the game and get
Right.
a
Correct.
standard grade,
Correct.
we'll get these points.
You will get these points. Now, this is an actual grade, so you need to get at least, I don't know, however many of them. If you get 12 of them, then you have a 60% for this assignment. There are other classes that do similar sorts of things. It's often in history classes that they'll do like these big elaborate games, but for music history is kind of the same thing. And I feel like you get so much, like when we're just reading through it and we're like, oh, Landini, Michelle, blah, blah, blah. But when you go away and you're studying for the test and you're like, oh, I remember Landini, he's Spencer, he's blind, he plays the organ, right? Then that sticks in your mind in a way that it doesn't always
Does
when we're
Spencer have to
reading.
play blind?
What's that?
Does Spencer have to play blind?
Well, to a certain
Isn't
extent.
she
To a certain
lovely?
extent, he has to perform according to his character. So his character is blind.
I think we should have to
and
say
organ.
bonjour. 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 Like
Well,
Beauty and the
Spencer's
Beast.
Italian.
Pardon, you know, pardon.
Okay, I would recommend
When?
before,
When?
stop, so that I can let you guys out. I would recommend that before Thursday, so on Thursday, what do you need to have prepared?
Speech. And all this
Introductory
stuff.
speech, all of that stuff as much as you can, and questions. Our new composer is going to go first and do an introduction, followed by which time you guys will have a few minutes to ask questions of him.
Yes, perfect.
Since you like being in control of the music and the people performing it, you would probably appreciate a style that set forth certain rhythms ahead of time for people to follow. Yes?
Yes, yes.
Bonjour. I am Periton. What people in the modern world will come to know about me is the majority is from an English university student, his classroom notes that he took during class. According to this anonymous English university student, we don't even know his name, so we refer to him as Anonymous 4. According to A4, Periton, myself, revised the Great Book of Organum, written by my predecessor Leonidas, for the Notre Dame Cathedral. I was already a fan of the organa style, but I wanted to add a few things and change a few things. So rather than simply having 2 parts, 2 voices, I added a 3rd voice and a 4th voice. Organum triplum and organum duplum is what I named them, and it seems to be catching on. When you take a look at my style, you will notice that the tenor voice is always very prominent. I take a melody that is already known from a liturgical chant and base my tenor off of that. It's something that people are already familiar with, so they'll be able to relate to it more easily. And then I add more voices on top of that with some extra notes, some running notes, just something to give a little bit more interest than a droning tenor voice. We already have words for my tenor line because it comes from a chant, and they will compose words for the upper voices that I have invented. So I believe that Ars Antiqua is a music for the people. Everybody may not be able to play it, but everybody can listen to it, relate to it, enjoy it. It's not so complex that the listener leaves befuddled, but it is complex enough to be interesting to listeners.
Je m'appelle Felipe de Vichy. I was born on October 31st, 1291. In my lifetime, I worked in the French courts of Charles IV, Philip VI, and Jean II. I am believed to be the inventor of new art of the Ars Nova. And in my music, I like to write with isorhythm, so I like to use repetitive, equal rhythm for the tenor voice, and then make more interesting things happen around it. Periton?
Yes. How would you address Jacques Delige, who is accusing Ars Nova of being imperfect?
He's wrong. I think that the Ars Nova is correct because it gives more variety to the rhythms that we can use for our music. So, in using the Ars Nova idea, you can have syncopated rhythms. So things that are opposite beat instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have.
My name is Philippus, or Felipe de Caserta. I was not rich enough to have scribes write about my life or have any paintings about me. So, unfortunately, a lot of my works and information about my life will be lost to the sands of time. You have heard that Ars Antiqua is best for having very strict rules, which allow some deviation. I am going to one-up them. Ars Subtilior has all the rules of the previous ones, with more. This enables you to do basically whatever you want. One of the ballads that I wrote, as I said, was in perfect time, and being ballads, I don't know if you can see this, they are 3 lines, so 3 voices usually. The top one, the cantus, usually is sung with poetry. I did not write the poetry, nor did I ever say who I took the poetry from. These rhythms that allow you to have more momentum in the song make it very interesting. However, it can be a bit difficult for the performers, but given enough practice and the awesome notation, which I'm going to talk about, they should be able to do it very well. So about my notation, if you want to draw a picture with your notation, you can. While this isn't very practical for performers, it looks really great for the audience who doesn't know how to read music. They see that and they think, oh, I understand this. That's a picture of a flower with these lines and black and red dots. Now, the red, Ars Antiqua and Ars Nova does not have this. Red dots. It's fascinating. There's red ink now. And what this red ink does is it's a way to shorten notes without losing any sort of momentum or the beat. Technically, the red ink shortens the lengths of the notes by 1/3. So again, more perfect in 3s. Yes?
Your music was intended for professional musicians and for the most cultivated audiences, so really with the ability.
Mm-hmm.
How is it going to appeal to any random person on the street?
Right, I was expecting that. So, the only problem that I will admit that this notation has is the difficulty that it can have to read. If you choose to not have it be difficult, you can do that. But some of it, like the stuff that I write, can be difficult. With the audience, however, usually, don't take this offense, audience, not you guys, but our audience, they don't know how to read music, and they don't know any better. Even though if there can be like some sort of 3 against 2 feel, or in some cases there's a 4 against 3 in my ballad, it still sounds good to them. Because as I said, it has that forward momentum that it doesn't make it drone on. If the audience is educated, then they'll understand that, hey, you're using that new fangled Ars Subtilior notation and style of writing. If they're not educated, they say, oh, that sounds nice.
What purpose does the red ink and the pictures in the music have to do with the actual musicality of the piece, or is it just to look pretty?
The way to write the music and the pictures, I think it's not meant for performance. It's meant to look nice and to give you a more kind of aesthetic, kind of prestige.
Since the idea is to advertise, as you say, what's the problem with just painting a road. Or whatever we're talking about. Why do you need this whole complicated system?
This
Why
is-
didn't you just hire an artist and have them do that?
The system isn't specifically for making the shapes of the pictures. That's just something that we like to do because it looks nice. Yeah.
But is your system not based on what was provided before with Ars Antiqua? Did it not lay the foundation for your new system?
I cannot take the credit for inventing this on myself. It's been built up through many, many years. So you started it, but we finished it and made it better. Okay, I'm gonna break character. This is not me. I don't get the red stuff at all.
She's not selling her point.
It's cool. We got red ink.
As soon as he was talking about his stuff, beginning, he was like, I like all this stuff. And I'm like, that's exactly what I do, like, all the time. He was like, I don't like complex rhythms. This is all about complex rhythms. So, like, I'm trying to sell this thing. It's like I'm a bad salesman trying to sell you a crappy car.
Landini, I haven't heard that name
Yes,
in
Daragani.
quite a while. My name is Francesco degli Organi. I was born in 1325. I died in 1397. I lived a long, interesting, important life. I was written about by many scholars and scribes because I was kind of a big deal. My name, Francesco of the organ. Call me Frankie. I invented things. One of the things I invented was types of organs. This is a new organ that I invented. I'm such a big deal. I have my very own cadence, Jack. Listen to this. It goes like this. I didn't invent this cadence, and I wasn't the last to use it. But Jacques, by golly, Jacques, did I work that cadence. I was the best at that cadence. That's why it's named after me.
I have a question about your musical style, because we heard a lot about your accomplishments in your organ building, but what exactly is your style? How is it different from Ars Nova and Ars Antiqua?
My style is Italian.
What does that mean?
It's different than both.
How?
It's basically Ars Antiqua with embellishments like this.
So basically you're just using the Ars Antiqua style.
Stealing like an artist. It's jazz.
So even though Ars Antiqua, everything's based off, doesn't the fact that it keeps changing means that Ars Antiqua isn't good enough for what we need to write down?
I think that Ars Antiqua was a strong enough base that others could build off of it.
I think Ars Nova
Ars
is
Nova's
the
the
best
best.
because we're happily in the middle. We don't
Yeah.
have a bunch
Yeah.
of dumb pictures in our music. And also we
right?
have cooler rhythms and everything.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jacques Delege. I have something to say about Ars Antiqua, and I also have something to say about Ars Nova. I wrote the Speculum Musicae, which is a series of books, and in the last one, I detail my opinion about Ars Nova. I hate it. It's terrible.
Get it,
It's
Jacques.
trash. It's awful. My basis for this argument is that it's too complex and there's too many rules with it. Ars Antiqua is freer in that there's not as many rules binding your subdivisions of rhythms and your notes. There's a lot of imperfections in Ars Nova, like the 3 and the 6. Well, I'm an old man and I don't like change, so yes. Perfect. I also have written in my last book that judicious laymen compared older music with modern music, Ars Antiqua versus Ars Nova, and they found Ars Antiqua to be much more pleasing to the ear than Ars Nova. Also, another thing about Ars Nova is it's written in different languages, and the judicious laymen didn't understand it and therefore lost the beauty of Ars Nova and what it could have been because they didn't understand the language.
Either. So, Savage, you get to pick a name. Who do we have?
Ridley Bus do Caserta.
Yes!
Come on, over here. Yes! We already planned this. We talked about
Who are you
this.
joining?
Ars Nova.
All right.
Yes, team!
So what that means is, first of all, Caserta, at the beginning of next class period, you are no longer Caserta. You are some other composer in the Ars Nova style, right? Landini, you are still free to choose one side or another side if you want, or you can stay where you're at. You know the process to do so if you want to change sides. For everybody else, we need to, on Tuesday, have faction arguments. So you've got up to 10 minutes to make your argument as a group. Remember that you're still trying to get your different points for different things. And following that, people have an opportunity to ask questions.
Today we are here not to debate. We are not here to convince you that one way of art is better than the other, that one is not as credible as the other. Today we are here simply to persuade you that as a new composer starting out, you should start with the basics. You should start with tradition. And that's where Ars Antiqua comes
I
from.
am the guest, Frank from the Deutschland, also known as Germany. I have several accomplishments under my name. I helped establish rhythmic notation, assigned note values. Because of how smart I was during my time, meter in 9/8 was considered perfect. You know, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, or 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4. You got lots of counting going on to keep you interested as a listener and as a composer.
We got long notes, we got short notes, we got long, long, short, we got short, short, long, and all kinds of rhythm.
So this is a list of all of our rhythmic modes. Now you said last time that you like control, correct? Now these rhythmic modes are going to allow you to have a certain amount of structure within your music. Now you don't have to stick with one particular rhythmic mode for the entire song. You can switch it up between 2, maybe 3, since 3 is a good number. We have a little example for you. We took a simple folk melody that many people are familiar with, and we changed it up with some of our rhythmic modes.
Notation courtesy of Franco.
Now these are just some of them, John. Just some of them.
We didn't
You
include
don't
all
have to
6.
use, right, you don't have to use all of them all the time. It's not a,
In fact, the fifth
Bad
long long
prescription.
was commonly used in tenor voices as a drone, while the upper voices sang above it.
let me just check all the stops on my portative organ here.
Compose it.
Landini likes to take a liberty. Jacques, if you write it, then that's the way it is.
I was wondering the whole time you were presenting. So, I wrote a whole page of questions for Italian. Did you join them now?
You should learn the rules before you break them. Start with a solid foundation. You have to learn to play the Beatles before you can play Metallica. You have to learn Sousa before you can learn Maynard. You gotta learn Periton before you learn Michaud.
So because I used to be one of these guys, I'm going to talk about how crappy our superior is. So literally, the only purpose of this music is to make it look pretty. As you can see right here, we have, Jacques, I'll bring it closer so you can see. This is the type of music that our superior is used for. Now, can you read that?
Nope.
Would you be able to perform that if you had to perform it in front of an audience?
Sooner gouge out my eye.